Hi, it's Katie Arwood again for OneBook1County.com and MCC Reads, and I'm here with my librarian friends to talk about Virgil Wander.
Hi, I'm Beth O'Grady from the Carson City Public Library and the Crystal Community Library.
Hi, I'm Maddie Cook. I'm the director of Flat River Community Library in Greenville.
Hello, it's Patty Rockefeller from White Pine District Library in Stanton.
Hi, I'm Sherma Horrocks from Richland Township Library in Vesterburg, Michigan.
So, Virgil Wander, not as jovial maybe as Running with Sherman, and kind of received some mixed reviews, but still an outstanding piece of fiction. Beth, tell us your thoughts.
Okay, one reason I would recommend Virgil Wander is something you brought up, Katie, is the beauty of the language, the writing skill of Leif Anger, the author. What I really enjoyed about it was the book is sort of promoted as looking at small town life, the people in a dying town, but it wasn't so much about small town life to me as it was about the portrait of each individual person that the author painted of the people who lived in the town. Every person had, well, it seemed they had their own tragedy and suffering, but still just went forward with every day, and they seemed to come together and make, because of Virgil, or not, yes, because of Virgil, they come together and connect with each other. And you know, often in novels or movies, there's a climax and then all the loose ends are tied together, and that doesn't happen in this book because life isn't really like that. Bad things happen, good things happen, and you just have to deal with it and go through life, and that's what these people do in Greenstone.
And in a small community, when something bad happens, something good, there's always someone there to either share the enjoyment or share the sadness and help you get through it.
Well, a couple of things about this book. I'm more of a like to tie things up or looking for a plot or something like that, and it wasn't like that. It was really about characters and their own things that they had to overcome, or maybe just their quirkiness that, you know, was brought out by the author. So that was interesting. I just, for me, I'm more of a Running with Sherman type book, but that doesn't mean that this wasn't a good book. And my favorite part of it would have been when they all got together, because each of their little quirkiness was special, and they just all seemed to get along well when they did their after parties, when they were watching their bootleg movies and having their potlucks. That just looked like a place I wanted to be.
There were so many things that I liked about Virgil Wander. I loved how it's character driven. It could be any small town in America. I saw a lot of people in there that you can recognize from your own life, and so I loved that character development throughout. I loved, of course, everything about the old movie theater and the old movies. It reminded me a lot of my childhood and the town that I grew up in, and was able to really relate to that. And just love the development throughout, where, yeah, it's just like any town. Things happen and you just continue to move through it. And I just thought that it was an awesome read for this time, because it is interesting how you're able to cope with people who you are close with in your small communities, and how you kind of just band together and get through things. And I just love that about Virgil Wander.
Maddie grew up a little bit with her grandparent
Yeah.
in the Ionia Theater, which to me, even going to the Ionia Theater was very much like going to Virgil's Theater. What was it
Yes.
called? The Empress?
The
or-
Empress. I was picturing the Ionia Theater in my mind.
That part, I love going to like old buildings or historical places, or even just things around our community that have saved a piece of the history. Right now our library is looking at moving into the Masonic Hall, and that place even has a historical value to me, and I don't want to get rid of everything that's
Yeah.
there to build the new library, and it reminded me of that kind of thing. Save a little bit of history.
Well, and I thought, and maybe this is part of the reason why I enjoyed it so much, but there were a lot of things, yeah, that reminded me of my childhood, my grandparents. So not only my grandpa, who was the manager of the theater, But my grandma, who was a huge fan of Richard Russo and John Irving and the types of character-driven books that he writes, just really reminded me of that. So I thought it was just a really good read for this time.
One thing that I thought was a little bit different is where he hadn't looked in that closet.
Yeah.
If I moved into a place, I would have had a door
Yeah.
apart.
Yes. You know.
How long had he been there before he looked in the closet?
Wasn't it a year?
I don't know. The closet door, he thought it was locked, but it was really just sticky or something like
Maybe
that.
he'd shown too many horror movies.
Yeah, he didn't want to look
And
in
knew.
the I
That
don't
would
know.
drive me crazy. If
That
there was
was
a
it.
locked door in my apartment, I didn't know what
Yeah,
was in there.
there could have been.
Yeah.
But that was a interesting twist too. That was kind of the plot to me. Those movies was something he had to deal with. Am I going to give them up? Am I going to
Yeah.
keep them? How am I going to give them up without going to jail?
The movie theater aspect of this book was something I really enjoyed too. I worked at a theater when I was in college, and sometimes for a special treat on Friday evening, after we'd shown all the movies at midnight, our manager would let all of us get together and watch a movie. You know, there'd be 10 of us in the
Oh,
theater.
wow.
It was really neat.
So what is it about movies that bring people together?
Story.
Yeah, it's
just
We all-
books. Yeah.
And again, just like books, there are some that we're all going to be loving and some that we're not. But they were talking about how they even enjoyed watching ones that they thought stunk.
Yeah.
But they all could, get
It was
together.
a community.
It was
they
a
had their
community.
potluck, and
At
that was just what
potluck,
they
you can't
did.
go wrong with that.
I don't think that there's
I
probably a
miss
whole
that.
lot that you can do way up there in Minnesota. It was just.
So Maddie, you had mentioned earlier about the symbolism in the book. Do you want
That's
to talk
true.
about that?
So I think kind of some of the things that we've touched on, things like, so of course it's on Lake Superior, and it involves people's lives, and their lives are very turbulent. They're normal people's lives where things happen and they have to work through them. So kind of just that turbulence from the sea and the turbulence in people's lives and the recurrence of the ravens, I think were kind of in some ways foreboding. You knew that something was going to happen, that just like normal life, bad things kind of happen. And I thought that was so interesting. And Katie brought up a good one earlier about the kites and how the kites kind of could dictate where things were going to go and how things were going to go. And that was so fascinating. It wasn't, as you read it, it's almost Hemingway-esque in a way that it's so simply written that you can kind of miss the symbolism and you can kind of miss the beauty of what he's trying to portray because it is so simply written. But there was a lot of symbolism in there, and there were a lot of lines that I read again because I thought, wow, that's really powerful, or that's really beautiful. And even just sitting here with you guys talking, I thought, oh yeah, that was there too. There was a lot of that for me in this book.
Well, I think that the title contains some symbolism. His first name is Virgil.
Yeah.
But also, and the last name Wander, it's almost like he went on a journey in his own hometown.
Yeah.
Okay. See, this helps. Folks, if you get a chance to go discuss this book with anybody, that might help. Because to me, it wasn't my very favorite book, but I'm glad I read it. And I was just really looking forward to hearing what this group had to say about it, because I figured I would learn something from it. And there's stuff in here that I didn't pick up on, and I'm glad I heard.
The
Yeah.
fish.
Yes.
I mean, the monster.
The sturgeon.
The
Yes.
sturgeon. It was kind of a little bit like Moby Dick.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't research this, but I could do some digging. I wondered, Rune being Norwegian, why did he throw that in there? What and ravens and kites, is kite flying popular in Norway, or does Rune symbolize a character from Norwegian mythology or something? I didn't research that, but I wondered about that one.
It makes you want to
Yes,
research,
it does.
which that's good too, I guess.
There were a couple of quotes that, since you mentioned, Beth, about the sturgeon, there was a quote out of chapter 4 in the second part that said, in referencing the sturgeon, if we hadn't been looking, we'd never have seen it. I wondered then and still wonder what giants we missed by not looking.
Oh,
That's beautiful.
that is.
And in a small town, you see these other things that maybe in a big city are lost, but you can see the giants, and giants are sometimes the smallest, not in character, but maybe children. some of the smallest
Right.
people we know, or the person that you've never heard speak or has never visited your house, or maybe you haven't received a Christmas card from. You just don't know who is it that you're missing. And maybe even this time in our world, we're discovering some of those people.
I think sometimes we
Correct.
also
Mhm.
take, like, there's so many characters in here.
Mhm.
There's so many characters in the small town where I
Right.
live. And I think sometimes I take them for granted. They're always going to be there. Their character is always going to be there. And they're more than just their character. And I need to remember that. And maybe I was
Mhm.
thinking it kind of a combination of the animals and the people. I need to look at them a little deeper.
There is a lot to this book. The Man on the Water.
Yeah, what about that? Somebody help me with
And,
that.
and I thought, is it going to be Alex Ghost telling Virgil to get together with Nadine?
Nadine,
It's okay
yeah.
with him, or
So what about the man on the water? Somebody talk about that.
So when did he disappear? For me, he disappeared. The stronger Virgil became in himself, this new self, when he kept talking about the new Virgil, the stronger he became, the more confident he became, the man then finally disappeared. Maybe that was
he
a
maybe
shadow
didn't need
of
them?
Who
Or
Virgil
maybe
Of
maybe
the
it was
old
a
Virgil?
shadow of the old Virgil because it was
Right.
out on the water. Remember,
He left
I
it
kept
out
waiting
there,
for an
yeah.
explanation, but
Yeah.
this is as close as I'm gonna get.
for those who wonder, the novel begins with Virgil's car, and I've read this book several times and I'm still not quite sure what I think about this, crashes through a guardrail off a cliff into Lake Superior, and he's rescued. I've never truly understood whether that was an intentional crash off the
Mhm.
cliff, whether he fell asleep at the wheel, whether it was slippery because they talked about it being
Yeah,
kind of rainy
kind
and,
of yucky
and
out.
foggy.
Mhm.
And Virgil's in the drink, and from then on, and by the drink I don't mean liquor, I mean Lake Superior. From then on, Virgil has changed.
I wondered if it was intentional. I mean, he was having everything was kind of just slow-mo for him at his theater, and I didn't know.
And the
he-
worry about the films.
the
Yeah.
films, and I think he already was having mixed feelings about what he should do about Nadine,
Yeah.
because he really cared about her, but that Alec was his friend. I don't know. That I
Mhm.
wondered if maybe, but I never got that answer either.
So
except
I
for-
thought the guy on the water was the old Virgil.
Okay.
Okay.
Just kind of a reflection of his former self, still there, but
Mhm.
Maybe. We'd have to find out from the author if that's
Yeah.
what his intent was.
Well, and that's one of the things I liked about the book. It's that it's kind of like real life. Sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah.
And it reminded me, one of the things that comes up is that you don't really know what happened in the plane crash. And I love that that's a recurring theme throughout, because in real life, that's exactly how it is. Sometimes you just don't get those answers. And so there's hints at what might have happened, but of course, like a lot of things in this book, it's up to everyone's individual interpretation.
Was
And I like that.
Was the closest hint to what might have happened the items that were found at Lear's house
Yeah.
when they? Okay, you'll hear that.
so any other thoughts on Virgil Wander?
I would recommend everyone give it a try. It's always good to read a book that you don't love, maybe, but
Or challenges
or
you?
challenges you. Yes. So, and this discussion brought up a lot of points that maybe I hadn't thought about. So, I enjoyed it.
Now I'm hoping that if I read his other book there, that they're recommending Peace Like a River, maybe I would like that, because I like the language, but I just needed more.
It's a different story,
Mhm.
but still the beautiful language.
There you go.
So I would say Maddie made a great point. Certainly anybody who is a fan of John Irving, Richard Russo, just there are a lot of different kind of quirky character driven novels that are quite successful,
Yeah.
that this would be a book for them.